Okay, so sometime when Dot Hack was originally made, way back in the mid-2000s, one of the biggest mysteries was trying to figure out who some characters were. And while they were there from the very beginning, we never really knew who they were because we never had any leads. Well, one of them was actually Helba, and I actually think I might know who she is. It's actually kind of interesting because she's been there from the very beginning, even in the original series, but we just don't know this until later on. And you're going to see a pattern here. This is what leads me to believe this, and I don't think anybody's ever mentioned this. A lot of people think she's an organization member from Mama, but it's not even that, because the members of that clan are too old to be how old she is. So I don't think she has any speculation in that field, but I think it's somebody else. So anyways, so Helba is probably, like, you don't see her too often, but when she does show up, she is working with Wiseman. But if Wiseman is Warren Brock, aka Hino from the GU series, then we know that she's got to be someone related to Wiseman as far as wherever they're originating from. They got to be working in the same facility, or they have to be working like pretty close to each other, because they would want to keep a lot of this information classified. So they're working really close together, trade partners, or something that they know each other in real life somehow. Okay. So we don't know who she is offline. We don't know her age. We don't know her gender. Could be anybody. But so we'll fast forward here. This Helba is a surprisingly tall female character that wears revealing clothing. She dons headwear similar to a priest's cap with a visor that covers her eyes. Her normally masked face is revealed in the second version of XXXX. She is calm and collected and confident in what she does. She also puts on a mysterious persona and acts suspicious around her so-called allies. Her aloof demeanor implies that seems to be knowing more than what she's revealing. So keep that in mind. But here's where it gets interesting, though. So here's the two most important things probably to think about. Nothing is known about Helba except for the fact that she is a professional hacker. That's one. Who takes her work very seriously. That's two. And although she uses a female persona, it's not known whether she is actually female or whether she is just one person. She is very active on Japanese servers of the world. That's 3. However, the list leads many to believe that she is Japanese. 4. However, here's something else that's interesting. They never mention that Helba is using multiple accounts. So if she was different people using just one account, there would be multiple server breaches from just one account rather than just being one account on an MMO. If you know how this works, then what I'm saying is she's just one person. It's not, you know. So she enjoys playing mind games with people and hacking. She also finds things as deleted data particularly interesting. She also has some knowledge about the Empatha of the Twilight, which is basically the epic poem that you were trying to find the pieces for that were sealed away. There's only very few people that even know about this in Pluto's Kiss. However, this is why, aside from seeing her working with Wiseman, there's even very few people that even know about Pluto's Kiss, or, I mean, like, actually know more about it rather than just the event. They actually have reason to believe why they were involved in it. They didn't just know about it. They actually lived through it, and they knew the people that created it. And there's some more to this story that I'm trying to figure out still, but I do believe that, if I'm not mistaken, if Helba was... This is just one that I'm trying to think of right now. I don't have any proof of it, but it just seems like the timing seems to make kind of sense, though. There's a government agent that eventually visits Wiseman when we find out he's Warren Brock, and they take him into eyewitness protection. But it's possible that that same government agent could have very well not just found Warren Brock, but that's the reason why we see him working in Dot Hack when we see him in action with what he's able to do. And I think that's another reason why, like, whoever was Helba at the time was also probably met Wiseman at some point, or at some point they were working together. So if it's not the same government agent that found him originally, it'd also be a government agent that, well, it'd be a programmer that was just working with him at some point. So we know for a fact that, at least as far as Helba goes, she's working with Wiseman because they collaborate very closely. And if you read all the emails that, not just the personal ones that Wiseman sends out, but all the quotes that Wiseman has, you'll realize that they're working very close together. Helba is, in fact, inside of Wiseman's guide, his personal organization, which we know later on it's the same people in GU just 7 years later. And this leads me to believe that Helba is the same woman that was around P, which would later be Rika, or Reki. I forget how to spell her name. It's either it's Reki, yeah, something like that. But it's I forget how to spell it now. But basically, she was the one that was working really close to Wiseman. Therefore, she knew Hino very well in real life, at least as far as the personality goes. And she was a very astounding hacker. We know that later on. She is said to be, they're still sharing a business relationship 7 years later. This would explain why. Because if you play GU, Helba's nowhere to be found. She's only mentioned a few times, if I got that right. And it's easy to miss those mentions. Helba was also the one that created the Net Slum servers. And at the same time, though, she was a very professional hacker and knew how to get around things that nobody else apparently knew how to do. And if I'm not mistaken, it's possible that she was playing in the servers a couple years before the original .hack originally began. So she had plenty of time to master and hone her skills, and she was already known before Kite shows up a couple years later. This would also explain why, because before the world takes place in the present, it's been on the line for a few years. And this would also explain why, when Warren Brock crashed all the servers and all that 2 years before he actually joins it, she would have probably been there for like at least a year playing the game or doing a few other things. But she would have been, because in the original timeline, if we're talking about infection and all that, the woman that originally played Helba was probably either, I'm trying to think, she was either 17 or 18 years old. And then fast forward to when GU takes place, she's 24, 25. And then later on, we find out because after GU's over with, another 6, 7 years later, she's 31, 32 at this point. Or I think it's 30 or 31 or 32. And we find out that at that point when she's playing as Shamrock, if that's the case. Because it's interesting. In the Net Slums, there's one character that's actually mentioned Shamrock. And Helba was the one that originally created the network slums. So if she is in fact supposed to be Rika, okay, whoever, Saeki, Rika, Reki, yeah, I gotta double check the spelling. I forget if it's an A or an E after the R, but it's she has been there from the very beginning, and because when she's working as Shamrock in Quantum, when .hack Quantum takes place, we find out that she created Shamrock because she wanted to seem like a really small child, but she was supposed to like hide her efforts, hide her hacking abilities. And we know that what's her name? Saeki is a very well-known hacker. She's a workaholic. She was a kind of like a programmer for a while before she lives in Tokyo, so we know it's definitely a woman. We know that she, later on when she is playing as Shamrock, she's also a private investigator, detective. So we know that whatever her reasons are for doing what she does, she doesn't lead people on. So if you really think about like Helba's personality, it shares the same exact thing with what's her name, Ryeki. No, right. Well, anyways, so there's just too many similarities. There's no other character that I can see in the series that she actually does. Not to mention when we finally learn about her brother June, that comes into the picture, her that she hasn't seen in years. He even refers to her as a chosen one before she ends up becoming a programmer and whatnot. So we know that she's got to have like some kind of heroic accomplishments that she goes off to do great things that nobody else can only dream of. So that would explain why, as she's growing up, she's such a talented and very mysterious individual, knows how to hide her tracks, but at the same time, it's like that episode of SpongeBob, if you remember the one where they're leaving town and Patrick, SpongeBob says, "We got to cover up our tracks, Patrick," and he's like sitting there running while he's painting the brush behind him. But it's like, imagine if they didn't do that. They were just able to hide their tracks very well. They can get in and get out before something bad happens. So, yeah, I just think it's interesting how Dot Hack it's so well written. There's so many characters that on the surface nobody knows who they are, but the information's there, but it seems like nobody's found this yet. It seems like. So if this is the case, this is what I'm believing, that I believe that Helba is in fact Reiki, Reiki, no, Reiki, yeah, Reiki, yeah, I believe that's her name. Hold on. So, let's see, I'm trying to think. Like, there's so many things to think about here. But the fact but it's also, what's interesting, if we fast forward to GU when she's under P's account, we find out that P is able to do, like, a couple things. Like, she's able to summon, like, some of the Legend of the Twilight magic, and there's not too many people that can do that. So the fact that she even knows about it and she has access to those powers kind of explains something else too. So, but here, this is even more that's interesting. While Helba doesn't necessarily have a physical appearance in the series, this is in the GU games, she briefly is mentioned in a message board during Redemption, also referred to her past role as Queen of the Net Slums. It says she'll also be mentioned. So it's implied that Helba's not there, like as if her character was deleted and moved on to something else. And in this case, and we find out that Reki or Saeki's account was actually, she changed characters a couple times, so she wasn't playing as the same one. And I don't think she was playing as different characters. She was only using one account at that time, which kind of makes sense. Because especially if you're trying to hide things, you don't want multiple accounts, right? You'd rather have one. Otherwise, you're risking being a double agent instead, and that's even more time-consuming trying to cover those. But, so that's interesting. But we know that when she was P in the original games, she was working secretly with Wiseman, but she was also one of his left and right wingmans. There's only very few people that work with Wiseman, even Yata, in his secret organization. And if we know that P is actually working with Wiseman, they have to know each other, and they also have to be in on the whole, like, Warren Brock thing, that he was really originally behind the whole, unless he didn't tell her about what he really did, but they know each other very well, and there's certain things they're not leading people on because they're watching the world through security. Because, like Wiseman was saying, he wanted to dedicate his time to being able to help out so they could fight like corrupted data and all that, and try to stop people from, because they're using the world, the online MMO, as like also a way to watch the world through like security means and all that, which is actually kind of interesting if you think about that. But it's interesting to think that Helba has got to be somebody that was there from the very beginning. And so I'll just fast forward. We'll see if we can find this. Okay. So in case you don't know, this is who P was in GU. She's 24. So at the time, let's see here. No, it's Reiko. Sorry. Reiko Saeki. So I made a mistake. I was thinking of her last name then. But yeah, this is where it gets interesting. So she's a system administrator for the World 2, a user, being able to summon Avatar Tarvos. She works for Yatta, which Yatta, if you don't know, was also the same one that was, in fact, Wiseman. She takes her job very seriously, but she also gets distracted. I also think, see, this is kind of something else, personality-wise. P is required to follow his job orders as she does willingly, being professional. However, unlike Yatta, she has trouble seeing the world too and its users in a impersonal way. She has the tendency to become attached to people and occasionally break the rules in order to help them out. Despite the tough personalities she's trying to give off, she's prone to occasional moments of weakness, especially when dealing with other people. Nevertheless, she's dedicated to both her job and Yatta and does her best to follow his commands. Now, here's what's also interesting. I think what happened was, this is at the time when Reiko, not Reiko. I'm thinking of Pokemon. What's her name? Okay. Reiko? No. Reiko, I do believe at the time when she was growing up, she was just kind of like, she was described as a lone hacker, like worked really alone, very self-perpetuated. She never really had a chance to bond with people, especially like as she got older, because she was probably, that's why she was more dedicated to people she trusted, because she was trying to like socialize too, trying to make more of her life rather than just dedicating her life to being so good at what she did. She was successful. She was probably rich. She made a lot of money. She had a lot of information. She knew how to, she was a viable service rather. And so that kind of explains why she bonded with people as P, because she was trying to open up more to people, aside from just her being like a super sexy looking icon avatar. But nevertheless, though, that explains why she probably was kind of like a sassy type. Because in Jiu, she is a sassy person, because she's trying to fit in with people while she's also dedicated to her job, but she's been doing it for so long that she's trying to find like other means of life too. And I believe that's what leads her on to this too. She's more of a human rather than just a work bot at this point. So there's that. So this is who she is. So P's offline self is a woman currently residing in Tokyo named Reiko Saeki. And she is a workaholic, loves eating out, has a pet cat, and also enjoys driving and owns a Maserati. Maserati? Yeah, Maserati. And, okay, so this is where it's also interesting. Saeki is also the younger half-brother of a former CC Corp employer, Jun Bonsuya. In 2016, she suddenly quits her job as a programmer to work at the CC Corp. And this is a picture that they have of her and her brother. They haven't seen each other since they were young. And her brother was the one, before he mysteriously disappeared and died, at least if I got that right, he mentions that she's supposed to be like a chosen one over time, and eventually it becomes obvious that this is why I believe that she ended up taking that persona, why she ended up doing things, because she had a gift and was able to change the world with it. It says, find the final file on the terminal disk is issued to her from her brother, where it is revealed that he's her brother, although they haven't seen each other since they were very little. It also explains to her that she's a chosen one, and that the PC for Tarvos is stored on his computer. So that explains why she probably started off the way she did. I'm trying to think where else. But it's interesting because there's so much in the series that's hidden. I'm trying to find it. Hold on, where is it? I think there's one more on here I'm trying to mention. But I forgot how long the series is. So P can basically equip lost weapons, but she's also Rengeki. Let's see here, where is it? Okay, so basically this would explain why her abilities match her personality. She knows a lot about the dark magic of the poems and the Twilight, and why she was able to do what she did. So this explains why she knows what she knows, and this is why I do believe that she is Reiko, Reiko, because they reveal that she was working with Wiseman, and Wiseman was really close to her. She wouldn't be as smart as she is if she didn't have these abilities. And I can't think of any other woman in the series that actually has these abilities. Okay, and then we're going to try one more. Hopefully this comes up. Okay, so sometime after GU, probably like another 6 or 7 years later, we hit Quantum. So she plays the character Shamrock, the little girl. And she's still in Yadamir's guide. And so Quantum is basically talks about her embarking on a legendary quest called the One Sin. So Shamrock's appearance is a young and version of Anina's in the gothic lolita fashion, but her ribbon color shoes and dress design are somewhat altered. Okay, so we know this for a fact. She's also the character behind P and Ender 7 years earlier. Ender, sorry. And, okay, so she's very business-like and serious, but it's also caring to the one she's close to. Okay, so then this is where it gets interesting. So Shamrock is present during the One Sin event with her guide members, but when the Sakuya interferes with their combat, she is forced to flee. Afterwards, Asta and Io 10 put a reward for Sakuya's without Shamrock's permission, causing a big fight that ends when all the PCs are transported to a tree with cages. Okay, but keep this in mind though. So this is where this definitely raises a red flag that explains this whole thing. So despite Tarvos being attached to P, Shamrock can still use Data Drain, which she uses to save Asumi's PC from infected Eri, the character. And then this is where it's interesting. The character, they're referring to Shamrock, was specifically made by Reiko to appear inconspicuous. So basically, it was created as a decoy, but at the same time to hide other things. And allowed her to gather information she needed without seeming suspicious. That's exactly what Helba did. Why she was able to do these things. And the fact that she knew how to do this. What other character knew how to do this that we know of? So it has to be her. Shamrock also appears, and this is also interesting, Shamrock also appears as one of the names of the net slum inhabitants of the world. So the fact that she's not under Helba anymore, and the fact that she refers, it's also a reference, but because all the references have something to do with the characters in the game, it also has something to do with what's going on at the time. So this refers to the fact that Helba's not in the original GU series, but her character means that she's making references, trying to keep that legacy alive, while also being a different character. So that's something interesting to think about. So if this isn't true, I'd be very surprised. But the fact that Helba is, in fact, Reiko Saeki is interesting.